I think the 10th anniversary is the appropriate occasion to sum up all the research that's been done over 10 years, which suggests that the story we've been given about 9/11 is not true.
We wanted an investigation into all of the actions and failures that had led to the deaths of our loved ones and so many others on that horrible September day. A real investigation into 9/11 has never been done.
Why didn't the commission deal with the collapse of Building 7, which some call the smoking gun?
At 5:20 in the afternoon on 9/11, it fell vertically and symmetrically in 6.5 seconds.
NIST acknowledges WT7 came down without resistance and without doing any work for over 100 feet. They even gave the equation of the line. It shows that the slope is exactly equal to the acceleration of gravity. The fact of free fall is literally proof of demolition.
Boom, 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 boom. Just like 20 straight hits.
We just heard one more explosion. That's about the fourth one we've heard.
High-rise office buildings do not collapse due to fires. All 3 skyscrapers were destroyed by explosive-controlled demolition. But take a close look now at the corner, where you see developing a series of explosions rapidly advancing down the corner of the building much faster than the rest of these explosions, almost as fast as the free-falling objects.
We have found what we call nanothermite.
The thermite reaction was present and occurring at the World Trade Center on 9/11 and afterward in the pile at the World Trade Center site.
Thermite must have been there one way or the other.
The FBI's official 9/11 investigation codename is Pentagon. It's the official story, of course, in the 9/11 Commission report, and all the media that follows their lead is that bombs really weren't involved at the World Trade Centers or the Pentagon.
Americans know you can keep secrets. We kept the Manhattan Project secret. That had 100,000 people working on it. Conspiracies happen. We know that. Iran-Contra, Watergate. Conspiracy is a sound legal concept. We use it all the time.
9/11 has unleashed a roadmap of war and destruction.
A war machine that has been building incrementally since Eisenhower warned us about it in 1961.
Anybody who looks at it will realize that we're not walking in there with tinfoil hats. We are just normal people. We are ordinary citizens who are concerned and trying to do something about it.
This isn't over. This is just beginning. This is just beginning.
And welcome back to this Tuesday, 17th of April, 2012 edition of InfoWars Nightly News. Now, we just talked about the unprecedented classical despotism integrated with a high-tech overlay in the news and analysis section of this transmission this evening. The unbelievable federalization, the checkpoints being set up across the country, but similarly with continuity of agenda in every other nation controlled by the banksters. We discussed the secret Stasi TSA spies on the buses engaged in pre-crime analysis. But what is all this predicated on? What is it all built on? It's built on the fraud that is 9/11. Anyone who actually investigates the official narrative of 9/11 quickly discovers that the official story is a manifest fairy tale that makes modern fairy tales like Star Wars and ancient fairy tales like Aesop's fables pale in significance. And, of course, I was talking about 9/11 before it took place, and then after it took place, day one, I've been exposing it from the beginning, understanding that it was a foundational event because I'd read the PNAC documents by Dick Cheney, and also, of course, I'd read the Rand Corporation a few years before saying the system was going to use terror, wink, wink. They barely denied that they weren't, wouldn't be the ones doing it, to bring in this transformation away from free societies to the national security state. I mean, if the globalists will kill 1 million Iraqis for some oil and weapons sales and to secure a larger, global system over there for Israel and others, they would certainly enslave Americans, Canadians, Europeans, Chinese, it doesn't matter. This is a scientific system of permanently breaking the human will. And it's what we talk about. And this is the Reichstag fire, 9/11. Now, there's a new 6-hour production out, the Toronto hearings on 9/11, uncovering 10 years of deception. And it has the latest information, the integrated, vetted information, amazing people involved in it. Yes, we're selling it at Infowars.com. If you get it there, you support our operation, but also Dan Dix and the group that he's put together over the years, Press for Truth, and the other great films they've put out. You call this a presentation/film. Very well done in the production, but it's the material that's so important. This is key to expose, because if the myth of 9/11 and this new religion of government worshiping and fear worshiping and police state worshiping is not deconstructed, which is beginning to happen, then they will be able to launch this global imperium. This is the cross on which they're crucifying free societies everywhere, is the 9/11 fable. As Webster Tarpley said many years ago in 2006, when we had our big C-SPAN event that they actually aired, C-SPAN said was one of the record shows ever in their history. Up until that time, they aired it taped. He said at that event, we must take the lie of 9/11, the fraud, and break it, because it's one of the main mechanisms. So joining us is Dan Dix, uncovering 10 years of deception, the Toronto hearings on 9/11, with the International Center for 9/11 Studies and Press for Truth present it. And we, again, really appreciate him coming on the show. Before I get to that, I want to read the quote of the day by Sun Tzu. Confront them with annihilation, and they will then survive. Plunge them into a deadly situation, and they will then live. When people fall into danger, they are then able to strive for victory. Unless you're taught not to defend yourself and taught that only the government can protect you from criminals or terrorists, and then the government says you're not allowed to protect yourself. That's what happened with 9/11. And so the revolution against this fraud is a revolution against tyranny, the spirit of tyranny itself. Dan joining us from Canada. Great to have you here with us today. Tell us about this film. We just saw the trailer coming in, but tell us why you put together this tour de force.
Well, we were basically contacted by the International Center for 9/11 Studies. They had put together and organized the international hearings, which was a 4-day event, which was held last year back in September, from September 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. And they brought us on to basically be the production crew to document the entire event. So we did just that. We put together a solid little crew and set up about 6 different cameras and documented the entire 4 days worth of presentations. And these, of course, are presentations by expert witnesses. We're talking about scientists and architects and engineers and people who have been studying this, the events that transpired on that day for over 10 years now. And they all had very concise presentations. And we were brought on with the huge task, as you can imagine, to document the 4-day event and compile it all into a comprehensive DVD. And we managed to do that, keeping it in at around 6 hours. So it is kind of like a film, like a 6-hour-long film, but it's more of an information DVD package of all the latest news and information on what took place that day. So this disc is absolutely crucial for anybody who wants to learn more about what actually took place that day and what didn't take place that day.
Dan, adding a caveat here, those of us that have been aware of this hoax for many, many years think that, well, everybody else must know, or the debate's been finished. Those that won't look at the information, you know, those poor souls, those timid souls, let them crouch down and lick the hand that feeds them, the fetid hand of the eugenicist. But now we've seen the government shipping guns into Mexico to blame the Second Amendment and caught. We've seen the Justice Department now caught running the Trayvon Martin protest. That's now come out. And NBC editing the tape to make Martin sound like a racist to create a divide and conquer race war. We've seen fake WMD reports, and we know now it was premeditated. Bush and Blair met twice and said, fix the intelligence, and they basically killed Dr. David Kelly, the head inspector, because he wouldn't go along with it. He said, this is a lie, and they said, die. But so now people are really ready to see the truth more than ever, and so much more has come out. What do you say in context with other false flags, Oklahoma City, Now police officers, the ones they didn't kill, like Terrence Yakey, have come out on my show and others and said, yeah, the FBI came to the police station and said, if you talk about what you saw, we're going to kill you and your wife. I mean, they're on my show saying it. You can tell, you know, one of them, a sergeant and others, they're scared, but they've got the courage to do it because they understand. So many of these guys I talk to now that are whistleblowing say, look, I realize I could get killed, so I didn't talk about it all these years, but now I have to because this is such a tyranny, it doesn't matter. It's destroying the whole country, our children, our grandchildren. There comes a time when men have to not be worried about what people think of us, the peer pressure, or what even happens to us. We've got to say, whatever happens, happens. I'm throwing my full weight against you. But in a roundabout way, what I'm trying to say is, truth's time is coming. It's only ripening now. And now is the time to redouble the efforts for 9/11 truth.
Absolutely. I see where you're going with that is that it was the ultimate false flag that was perpetuated upon the people. And in the 10 years since, I think people are starting to catch on to the fact that all these things we're seeing now, as you said, like we got the NDAA, we have, you know, TSA sticking their hands down our pants. We have, you know, the crackdown on our freedoms on the internet. All of these things people are starting to realize couldn't have been possible without the false flag known as 9/11. So yes, it has been 10 years, but more and more and more people are beginning to question what actually happened that day, and they're realizing that what the government is telling us is not necessarily how it actually went down. And people are fed up with the state of just the tyranny that is being poured upon the American people, Canadian people, and people all over the world. So again, that's why we wanted to get involved with this project and get this information out there. So we would strongly encourage people, if you have not seen it yet, please pick up your copy at Infowars.com or pressfortruth.ca, because this information is absolutely crucial. We will be releasing all of their presentations completely unedited at pressfortruth.ca, because as I said, getting this information out into the public is absolutely key. But if you would like the edited down comprehensive DVD, you can get that at Press for Truth and Infowars.com. And I'd like to say, in regards to the editing process of this disc, as I'm sure you can imagine, it was a rather overwhelming task. And I want to say at this point, we have to give credit where credit's due, and none of this couldn't have been possible without the work of Press for Truth's own Stephen Davies. Stephen Davies really came through on us, for us on this project, and stayed up many restless nights editing and putting this DVD together. So I wanted to let people know that it couldn't have been done without Stephen Davies, and he's just did an outstanding job with this disc.
Break down what is covered in a synopsis and who's in it, you know, how the committee was set up, for those that haven't seen it yet, so they get an idea of what they're going to witness.
Basically, we've structured it into each separate day. So the DVD has the 4 separate days, and then within each day, we have all of the guest speakers giving their presentations to the distinguished panel. And what is supposed to happen is at the end of the hearings in the following months, the panel will be reviewing all of the information submitted and drafting up a report that will coincide with this DVD, so that it can hopefully be the thing that is necessary to push for a real investigation into 9/11. So that's basically what the hearings was all about. And again, it takes time. It takes time to go over all this information. It's an incredible amount of information. And not only all the presentations, but I interviewed each of the speakers. We have people like Niels Harrit and Peter Dale Scott and Kevin Ryan and Richard Gage and David Chandler and Cynthia McKinney, and the list just goes on and on. So many people who have been at the forefront of researching what took place that day over the last 10 years are in this film. And we not only documented their presentations, but we also got one-on-one sit-down interviews with them. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of what you can expect from the DVD. It's a chronological documentation of the 4-day event, intermixed with my one-on-one interviews with all of them. And then, of course, the steering committee at the International Center for 9/11 Studies is now working on drafting up this report to coincide with this DVD to hopefully petition governments and to get the proper subpoena power and to be able to have, as I say, a real investigation into 9/11. Because as you'll see in this DVD, they completely shatter the official narrative that was given on what happened that day. And another thing is speculation and an opinion was all left at the door. None of that was brought up. They stuck strictly to scientific facts and only things that they could prove scientifically. And so that's another thing that I think is great about this informational package.
And again, the system admits our whole world is based now upon this event. Of course, you have a better chance dying in automobile accidents and hundreds of other things, but they've really hyped the fear up, and the U.S. is now a land of cowards, home of slaves. At least that's what the system would like us to be. But when you think about that our whole world is based on this, it's good to spend 6 hours in 2 or 3 sittings to watch this, to take notes, and to encourage others to watch it. Because once you discover the official story is a fraud, then it forces you to realize, well, what else is a lie? Again, what do you make of my point? Do you agree or disagree that now people are actually a lot more open to the fact that government can't and shouldn't be trusted?
Oh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt about this. I, such as yourself, have been looking into this particular topic for, over a decade now. And, I remember talking about these things 5, 6, 7 years ago, and it would be, I'd be laughed at in some certain cases. But all that is changing because, as I say, I think what we're seeing now is a culmination of the last, an awakening that's been taking place over the last 10 years. And people are now to the point where they are ready to open themselves up to the possibility of this information. I like one of the presentations in this DVD brings up for the people who have a hard time considering this information. It's amazing, really. Still, there are people still out there who have the cognitive dissonance, where they literally won't believe what their very own eyes are telling them. And when you watch the video footage that's included in this disc, especially in regards to the collapse of Building 7, our own eyes are telling us that looks like a controlled demolition. And one of the presentations that I was rather impressed by was from David Chandler, and how he shows how the NIST, the National Institute for Safety Standards, was scientifically flawed. The way that they presented the collapse of the World Trade Center 7 couldn't have possibly happened that way, and he outlines it perfectly in this DVD. So that's one of the presentations that I was certainly impressed by.
Dan, I want to bring up another subject to you, not just Fast and Furious, a proven false flag where the documents came out that the Justice Department did ship tens of thousands of guns to Mexico to help a crime wave, to then blame the crime wave in Mexico on the Second Amendment and try to ban semi-autos. I mean, they're caught. Boom. John Corzine, White House advisor, stealing billions, MF Global, doesn't get in trouble, gets caught lying in Congress, all on record. Now, the fact that it's all out in the open. What about the fact that the West funded real al-Qaeda to attack Libya and overthrow that? Now they admit it's real al-Qaeda blowing up police stations in Syria, and our media is calling them freedom fighters, well, protesters with tanks and rocket launchers backed by the West. The fact that even the LA Times and others are like, wow, al-Qaeda's working for NATO and the West, but I thought I've got to give my rights up because al-Qaeda's going to get me. I mean, no one can be trusted. We're all al-Qaeda. They've got to take the diaper off a 2-year-old. They've got to grope 95-year-old women and strip search them because al-Qaeda, Dan. But the government gets Muttalib, the underwear bomber, on the plane. That's on C-SPAN. Government admits it. And we first had the witnesses on that saw it. Mr. Haskell, now running for Congress. In fact, I want to get Kurt Haskell on to the crew. Keep forgetting to do that. Probably thinks I'm snubbing him. I keep forgetting or asking the producer, and then they forget. Kurt Haskell, got to get him on. But the point is, I've just learned to do something right in midstream, or we all get busy and forget, folks. It's total transparency here at InfoWars. So all of that's going on. I mean, what about the fact that Al-Qaeda openly works for the criminal elements that have hijacked our society, and that they're trying to play us off against each other, Muslims and Westerners, in a divide and conquer stratagem?
Absolutely, Alex. Everybody is currently waking up to this fact that a lot of these groups like Al-Qaeda are orchestrated and funded and run by the government. And it is, again, it all comes back to these false flag attacks that are beginning to be exposed now because people are using the internet. People are starting their own blogs, their own websites, their own YouTube channels, and documenting these types of events and getting the information out there. And, it's an incredible time that we're living in, where people are starting to really see through all of these lies. So it's encouraging, and it's hopeful for the future. And that's why we're so happy to finally be getting this DVD out that's been 6 months in the making, to just add to that and to be able to contribute to people realizing, what these false flags are all about, who starts them, what they get out of them. And, we're just so excited and happy to finally be able to release this DVD.
Well, expanding on that, there's so many false flag examples that makes my head spin. When I was in Denver in 2008 for the DNC with Obama covering it, we had just gotten there like 2 days before it started, and there was this riot and arrest going on. And I said, man, those anarchists that they just drug off look like cops. Because your average real anarchist on the street, looks like they're on methamphetamine. I mean, I'm just doing an archetype. Like a trust fund kid that, hates their parents. I'm not saying real anarchists are like that, but kind of the street rat, type that this is like their military service or something. It's like a genre they've bought into. And I've been to enough events, like in Austin for the Fortune 500 back in 2000, that, I mean, when it's like a 6'3", 240-pound pure muscle guy with two other guys. I mean, they're cops. You can tell the bearing, the confidence, all of it. So I saw the cops do this fake arrest, and it was like over 100 yards of people. And I went on air and I said, I think they just staged this to make it look like the protesters are bad here. 6 months later, because of a lawsuit, Denver police admitted they'd staged that. Same thing happened in Seattle in '99, Italy, the G20. I mean, it happens all the time. But when was it? Time flies. Was it 2008? They're in right outside Ottawa, where the police got caught doing the same thing. And they got caught because the anarchists fighting with the police all had police boots on, police-issued boots. They think we're that dumb. I mean, this is just mainline criminality. When I was covering Bilderberg up in Canada, there in the capital in Ottawa, we were outside town at the big hotel outside of where it was happening. They had guys there going, hey, Alex, you want to attack something? And I'm like, you're a 6'5", obvious Royal Mounted Police. It's like, just like an FBI agent. And the guy's like, well, he didn't even deny it, because my camera guys were like 20 feet away. He goes, we're just making sure everything's all right. As soon as I called him out, it was like, knock it off.
Yeah, and I remember that. I was right there beside you. I remember that.
You actually remember? Wow, I forgot you were there. That's right.
I was there. You interviewed me. You included me in Endgame for that. Yeah, I remember that.
Wow, so I forgot you were actually a witness to that.
Yeah, I was right there beside you. I saw that guy saying stuff like, hey, maybe we should, get serious and do something. Why don't we actually do something to these guys? And trying to get one of us to say, yeah, let's get violent.
And then they had that fake hippie with the beret on going, I want to nuke them, agree with me. And I'm like, I just looked at the cops and I'm like, come on, man, we're just here protesting.
Yeah.
I mean, But
yeah,
the point
absolutely.
is, it's not just like they're trying to get us to talk about violence to see if we will. They'll go and do it themselves is the point.
Yeah. Well, like we documented, just like you said, these happens at the G20 summits. And of course, with the G20 event here in Toronto in 2010, and we documented that in Into the Fire. And you can see these thuggish black bloc types who, some of them are running right behind the police line. it's clear that there was police involvement, and they're always trying to manipulate these events to get more control. And if people want to see that, you can certainly check that out Into the Fire. That's also available at Infowars.com. But we document how these events are often manipulated by the police, by the authorities, to gain more control over the people.
Well said. Before I get to more on Islamic terror, in many cases being funded by criminal elements in Western governments and corporations, and explain how this works for people, other points you'd like to make about the inside job that's 9/11?
Well, again, as you said, people are waking up to this, but at the same time, I'm still a little bit surprised sometimes when I come across a lot of people who have never even heard of one of the biggest smoking guns, the collapse of World Trade Center 7. So many people still think that only 2 towers collapsed in New York on that day. And it still surprises me sometimes, and where a lot of these people will dismiss these ideas as conspiracy theories, yet they haven't even seen any of the crucial evidence, or they don't even know that World Trade Center 7 collapsed that day. So that just boggles my mind that that still goes on. And again, that's why this information is absolutely crucial to get out at this time. And I want to let people know that it is available, the DVD, but we have also made it available for download at pressfortruth.tv. And Alex, I've been stepping up my game this year. I started Press for Truth TV, and we're doing daily videos every day, weekly video reports every Wednesday. And so if anybody likes our work at Press for Truth and you want to show your support, we would ask that you subscribe to Press for Truth TV. You can download the DVD, and of course, you'll get access to all of our films and our daily videos and weekly reports. So that's a great way to show your support. But as far as the condensed, edited DVD version, if you want the actual physical package for your collection, which I strongly recommend, please check it out at Infowars.com. It's a must-have for the collection.
Sure, and of course you authorize people to make copies of the DVD and to air it on Access Television?
Absolutely, yeah. We fully encourage people to please make copies of this disc, burn it, hand it out to your friends and families and strangers, hold street actions in your towns, hold events, and hand this information out there. Just get it out there. We absolutely fully encourage that.
Well, the power, I mean, of people taking action for 17 years, starting on Access TV. Over the years, so many people got woken up when somebody sees one of my shows or films on Access. People need to get it on Access TV. It's still there, still has a lot of viewers. People air clips of the films on college radio. They send links out to people. The power of little people taking action is so amazing. You know, in the last 8.5 months, Dan, we've just been beta testing InfoWars Nightly News. Some nights it's 30 minutes. Most nights it's an hour and a half, 2 hours long. As we figure out how we want to do it, it's subscription at prisonplanet.tv. Then we post it the next day on YouTube, millions of viewers a week. We also just have discovered that it's been on for like 6 months in England on cable. We've said free to air. People are downloading it. It's on a lot of cable systems now where the managers download it and put it on themselves, not just Access. So without even providing the satellite uplinks and news sharing systems, which we're having to pay for and put in, it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're developing that right now. It's already getting out there because people are so hungry for the truth. That's what's exciting. Now, I want to show an analogy here, or not even an analogy. I want to go over a diagram here, Dan, because we just mentioned how the underwear bomber was gotten on the plane by the U.S. government, admitted in Congress a month and a half after I had witnesses on my show that witnessed it in Amsterdam, right as Chertoff rolls out the naked body scanners that he makes money off of. We talked about al-Qaeda being used by the West to overthrow Libya and try to overthrow Syria and calling them freedom fighters. I want to explain to people here with a drawing that I did while you were talking, if we can get a document cam shot of this. If you look right here, you've got the Corporate Crime Syndicate, CCS, and all their management systems and all their global propaganda. They want to destroy nation states or use them as kamikazes against their neighbors. They want to get control of governments and get the tax money back in bailouts. but to scare the USA and the West, Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, into giving over their authority and a police state, which is just strengthening the coup d'etat and financial penetration of this virus, and to erect police state chains around the society to make sure that they're in full control, to fully metastasize like the cancer they are into the West, Muslim extremism. And if you go back to British intelligence helping set it up, overthrowing the moderate government in Iran, others, creating al-Qaeda, creating Taliban, funding them, the hijackers trained at U.S. bases, all that's on record. That's how it works. So people think, are you saying the USA controls al-Qaeda? No. Criminal elements in the corporate crime syndicate that have infiltrated and taken over the regulatory positions in government felt confident enough on 9/11, as Dick Cheney said, barring a big catalyzing Pearl Harbor event that kills at least 3,000. And by the way, he said that. People can read that, the September 20th, 2000 document. We're not going to be able to go and invade all these countries in Africa, in Asia, in Eastern Europe. Not for even America to take it over and bring freedom, but to leverage the strength of the West against the rest of the world via the Muslim threat that's, quote, in every, Indonesia, Asia, China, Mongolia, it's everywhere. Tibet, Africa, it's their excuse to go after Africa. It's the excuse to go after China. It's the excuse to go after Eastern Europe and all the Caucasus states and Russia and in South America. It's the excuse to invade all these areas. So they take us over, claim they're protecting us from this when they're financing this. That's full spectrum dominance. You want a war to go into Afghanistan and get their opium production? You fund the U.S. troops and NATO troops to go in. You simulate the attacks to get the West to do it, and then you even fund the Taliban and al-Qaeda. That's full spectrum dominance to control the territory. So that's, a crude breakdown for folks. And as soon as I explain that to good old boys, they go, oh, criminal corporate interests are funding al-Qaeda, Taliban, and radical groups. They're putting the Muslim Brotherhood, that's al-Qaeda light, in everywhere. Iraq, burqas, no women going to the college, total enslavement. Libya, 60+% women graduating. Whatever you want to say about Gaddafi empowering the people compared to, I'm not for socialism, but a true socialism where they actually were sharing the wealth with people. Lifting up Africa, gone, destroyed. Put al-Qaeda in, sexual mutilation, burqas, whole deal's on. Same thing, shutting down freedom, taking the old dictator out, making it at least 5 times worse, most estimates are, in Egypt. Attacking Assad, not saying he's a great guy, but they're using al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda says we're going to kill the Christians and Jews once we get in there. And the media is like, you're not patriotic if you don't support al-Qaeda. Now they're just out in the open. How are they going to get away with that?
It's just like what you said. They're providing the excuses for invasion. And look at the new boogeyman Joseph Kony and their excuse to get in there into Uganda and the Congo and Somalia and Syria and other regions. But the amazing thing is, to get back to what we were talking about before, is it is somewhat starting to fall apart. Just look at with that Kony 2012 thing. So many people saw it for what it is. They even had to, shut off the comments on their videos because so many people were calling it out for what it was, which is a fraud. They saw that this is a lie. This is an excuse to invade by NATO, by the UN, bypassing congressional, Congress, who should have the ability to say whether or not the U.S. goes to war or not. They're trying to change that and just say, well, if the United Nations or NATO feels that for humanitarian purposes we need to invade these countries, then so be it. But again, luckily, their charade is starting to fall. People are seeing through it more and more these days. So we're just going to have to really continue with our efforts at exposing these false flag events for precisely what they are. It's just that, small criminal elements within the governments who are the ones carrying out the majority of these types of events.
It was the father of the U.S. Navy when many, many times defeating odds 3-1, 4-1. John Paul Jones, when his ship was sinking and he refused to give up, and it turned out that the powder magazine blew up on the ship next, so he ended up winning because he held out for another hour or so. John Paul Jones said, they said, do you surrender or we're going to let you sink and kill you? And he said, I have not yet begun to fight. Well, I want to say the new InfoWars motto is, we have not yet begun to fight. We have only begun to fight. And that's what it's all about. We know things are bad. They're worse than bad. They're crazy, to quote Network. But at least we're in the fight, and that's what makes us human. That's what empowers us. I don't agree with a lot of what Nietzsche said. I've read several of his books. But I do agree with that which does not kill us only makes us stronger, and humanity will make it through this great time of tumult. Dan Dix from Press for Truth, thank you so much for joining us.
That's my pleasure, Alex. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this extended edition of InfoWars Nightly News. Lord willing, and thanks to your support, we'll be back tomorrow night, 7 o'clock.